Hey everyone, welcome to episode number 64 of the Lift Free and Die Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. And after some delays and scheduling stuff, we finally got my buddy Kenny Santucci on here. So Kenny's a gym owner from New York. He owns the Strength Club, and you also own the apparel and fitness brand Strong New York. And Kenny and I first linked up in Seattle last September at Luca Hocevar's Vigor Ground Fitness and Business Summit, which unbelievable event. Met a ton of friends at those over the years. So Kenny, it's great to have you on, brother.
Buddy, it's an honor to be on. You know, I've been reading your stuff for a long time. Huge fan of T Nation. Love the name of your podcast. I mean, did you come up with that?
Yeah, but it's still a play on words of Live Free and Die Hard, right? So the fourth Die Hard movie. I was just thinking about the name because I did like the old name that me and Guido, my good friend who's my former co-host, had, the Fittest Devil. Just never loved it. And we just stuck with it. And then when Guido had a baby and decided, all right, man, you got to keep this going, but I can't do it. I figured, all right. And I've been all about developing, an individual brand in the space. So I had to rebrand the podcast as a piece that aligned with what I was doing versus something that was kind of outside of it. And ultimately, just one of those things you play around with ideas, and that's where the name came from. And now I struggle. When I first started, I had trouble not saying the movie name. And now I struggle to say the movie name, right? Because I'm so used to saying Lift Free and Diet Hard.
So here's a question for you. What's your favorite Die Hard movie?
I mean, the original is still so classic, and I watch it most Christmases. I didn't this year. I love 2. As good as 3 is, it's not my favorite. I find it's overrated because it gets away from the formula of the first 2. And I really love 4. I actually do. I love Timothy Olyphant, the villain. It's not his most charismatic. Like usually he plays sheriffs or like Western characters or like charismatic dudes. And he's sort of this really like uncharismatic figure in Die Hard 4. But I still love the movie. And then 5 was a dud, unfortunately. Even though I like Jai Courtney, who played his son, just not for me.
Yeah, 5 was shit. But I you know what? Because I was, in and around like that age group, and I was starting to get interested in New York. I was so drawn to Die Hard with a Vengeance, the third one. I loved it. I thought it was such a good movie. Probably, like, I obviously loved the first one, and then the second one's good, but I lean towards the third. So
Jeremy Irons was great as the villain, and of course Samuel L. Jackson. So, this is when Samuel L. Jackson was kind of getting out into becoming an A-list actor. The early part. I mean, he'd been around for a long time, but people forget that he wasn't a billable actor at the start of his career. Yeah. Well, we could talk about Die Hard all day, but I brought you on here because I also want to talk about your experience as a gym owner and a lot of other things. Yeah. So in a past generation of the fitness industry, you worked at a commercial gym, and then once you left it, all right, what do? You leave, you go open a gym, right? And that's not, there's so many other options now. You go online, you become a contractor at another facility like I do. There's just so much, but especially in one of the toughest places in the world to run a gym in Manhattan, because your gym, correct me if I'm wrong, the gym is actually physically in Manhattan, right?
Yeah. We're right in the center of Manhattan on 28th and 5th Avenue.
There you go. So what was the inspiration to open a gym?
For me, it's like all I've ever known is blue collar work, right? I come from a blue collar family, and all I could ever do was kind of just grind it out and do what I had to do. Like, I don't mind a hustle. I don't mind work. And for me, it was just a natural progression. It was the only place no one's ever had to tell me to go to. Right. Like, my parents always used to be like, oh, I got to go to church this weekend. I hated going, and I hated going to school. I wasn't very good at it. It was the only thing that I naturally gravitated towards. I have no tattoos because I just can never commit to anything. The only thing I've ever committed to in my whole life was the gym. I was telling somebody the other day, I think the longest I've ever been without stepping foot into a gym was like 3 or 4 days at most. If I'm away, the first thing I look for is a gym. The first thing I want to do in the morning when I am away or vacationing is going to the gym. It's like, it's how I set my day up. And I based my whole life around it. I was a fat kid, and going to the gym makes me feel good, right? It's that one thing that I need to do every day. It's, when I talk to Ferrugia about it, it's always like that. the things that we can't live without, right? Everybody has those 2 or 3 things that we can't live without that set up the rest of our life. And the gym for me is one of those things. And because I get so much joy out of it, I want to help other people find that joy as well. Me putting up on social media, telling people to work out more, to eat right. Somebody in Dubai or New Mexico or Canada, me telling them, yeah, if they want to use my stuff or online programming, sure. But at the same time, it's like, it's just getting more people to take care of themselves. I truly, and I've said this 1,000 times, it was kind of my inspiration for creating the Strong New York event, was I believe that you can change the world. You could heal the world a little bit more through fitness. People would be less anxious, less sad, less depressed if they were started to focus on themselves more. We've always been taught to consider that being selfish, but you can't truly help anybody else unless you can help yourself. And I realized that at a young age, when I started to take care of myself and started to prioritize what I need in life, then it allowed me to help other people more.
A gym, what better way to do that than to actually operate a gym?
Yeah.
What's been the footprint of that gym so far in the immediate community? And you and I talked off air too. We'll go into your passion for having it as an educational hub, but what has that gym done for the community?
So for me, it's during the pandemic. So I've had 2 gyms, or quote unquote 2 gyms before this. So I had a gym back in 2012, 13. I had a CrossFit gym. Fell in love with CrossFit. I was a personal trainer before that, doing group fitness. And I wanted my own CrossFit gym, and it was, easily accessible. And, I got a great opportunity. Sorry, lost there. I had a really great opportunity through, some people that I had met, and CrossFit at the time, and Reebok, and they were building a store out in New Jersey. So I had jumped on board and kind of took on this project. I was 49% owner. Kind of got a little shitty because I had some shitty partners, right? They were the money people. And I think a lot, you hear the same story from CrossFit owners constantly about how they, about how they, get involved with the wrong part. They lose the business. The whole business falls apart. Came back to New York, worked at a couple other CrossFit gyms, got asked to do, working in the boutique fitness industry as well here in New York, and then got asked to come on board as a CrossFit coach again at a brand new gym that had just opened up, which was at the time probably the biggest, most expensive CrossFit gym, I'd say, in the country. Building it out, I think they spent like $3 million building out this CrossFit gym. So I went there. Kind of turned their business around. They were strictly a CrossFit gym. I had brought a little bit more of a dynamic approach to what we were doing there. So they were just doing CrossFit classes. I started this whole HIIT program where it went from 3 classes to 65 classes a week, and we were doing really well with that. And it was basically a CrossFit light mixed with a little kind of boutique feel that I had from past experiences. So I kind of added all these elements together, kind of let everybody, all the coaches who were CrossFit coaches, and I brought in some other coaches, kind of give their own little flavor to it. And I started noticing that a lot of gyms around the country had started doing the same thing, right? It's more about the experience than it was about the programming. People want to come in. I would say this is like 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. Like, people were really starting to embrace the world of CrossFit, embrace functional training. So it made a lot of sense. And we did really, really well with that. Again, plagued by shit management, shit ownership. So that fell apart. Fast forward to the pandemic, I had, I was getting 20, 30, 40 people a day in the park in New York, not too far from my apartment. I bought kettlebells and dumbbells and battle ropes and all this stuff. And I started doing workouts in the park. And I was like, well, I just need a home to bring all these people. I just need a place where I could kind of just make my own rules and do my own thing. And that was just the inspiration. And then with rents started dropping, late 2020, early 2021, I was like, all right, let me start poking around. So me and 2 of my buddies started popping around to a bunch of different spots, looking at different opportunities. Found a great location where there's actually 4 other gyms in the building. One private training studio, a boxing studio, another like kind of PT rehab type place. But I was like, this is just a new flair. I do small group training and private training. But like we talked about before, I wanted to do some sort of continued educational program there as well, bringing people like yourself, Don, Pat, Jordan Shallows, like the people that I look up to and respect that I'd love to have come visit New York and come check it out. It's still the greatest city in the world. Everybody wants to come here. Everybody comes through here at some time or another. And I wanted this to be the place where people would come, do some classes, hang out, go for dinner, make it kind of a weekend out of it. Because that's my idea of a good time. So I was like, all right, how do I have the most fun with this and make it the most beneficial for myself and the community around me? And I was always, growing up, my parents loved the show Cheers. And I love the idea behind like walking in a place and everybody knows your name and everybody feels good. And I just wanted to create that same atmosphere.
Dude, I'm just like, I want to be there right now and experience this, right? This sounds fairly similar to what Mark, and Mark Fisher as well, what Mark's kind of done with Mark Fisher Fitness, again, in Manhattan. And when you said there, you said Don Saladino, who's got the barn there, who's a good friend of yours, and Pat Davidson, who's also a New York guy. So you have a good community of educators right there in your doorstep. With the focus on education, what's the broader philosophy? What does that let you do with the gym in terms of both brand and how you can positively affect more people?
It allows me to kind of get access to people who actually give a shit, right? I think there's a lot of people who, I think the pandemic, it filtered out a lot of the people who are just doing it because they didn't know what else to do. But it allows you to see who the people are who prioritize education, right? Who aren't dogmatic about what they believe in. If you're bringing in different educators with different philosophies, I think to be a good educator or to come up with your own concept, you have to be somewhat dogmatic. You have to believe in what you're teaching. I set up a whole thing years ago at my old CrossFit gym with the guys from On It. I love their style of training. It's a lot of unconventional, unorthodox stuff with the kettlebells and the maces and a lot of the stuff they were doing. I think they were the first ones to start doing a lot of like the flowy shit. And I started to really fall in love with that. And I brought that in, and a lot of people were like, oh, this is so hokey, it's stupid. And now it's probably one of the most looked up things on when you start to look at the fitness world. And it kind of took over during the pandemic. So I'd say I was an early adopter of that stuff, but I love, and then I don't know if you know who the Landmine University guy is. Have you seen any of his stuff?
So I don't, but we'll come back to him. When you're saying On It and all this sort of stuff, you probably met Sam Pogue in your travels. Sam might have been, So Sam's a good friend. He's done the podcast before, and he's the guy who went around teaching. First time I met Sam, 2017, Luca's event. We hit it off, and he did a presentation on mace training. So he was the man with On It who did all the traveling around, and he's been going on to bigger things since. So great dude.
Yeah. So I met Sam. So Sam had contacted me about being on their podcast. This is 2016, 2017. Right. I had done his podcast pretty early on. We got to chatting, and I was like, hey, man, I really love what you guys are doing. I had already admired them, and I was glad that he reached out to me, and I was already doing their stuff. So when I created my class in 2015, I had started doing everything with kettlebells. I was teaching people how to use kettlebells. It wasn't as relevant as it is today. Now everybody online has a kettlebell course. So I started teaching everyday people, the average Joe, how to swing kettlebell. And most people were like, well, why am I doing this? I was like, it's just an efficient tool. We don't have really the room. We can't be dropping barbells. It's an easier tool to master than a barbell would be. I think kettlebell conditioning is a great way to get in really good shape. And then we were doing a lot of like strength training. So it was like kettlebells and pull-ups and simple shit like that. That really got people found joy in it, and also a good routine to get in great shape. So yeah, for me, it's just a matter of like kind of find the people who really give a shit, who prioritize education. And, those end up becoming the people. It's like going to the right gym. Like you go to a barbell gym or a strength training gym or a global gym, and you start to surround yourself with people who are like-minded, who have the same type of goals, who kind of have the same direction in life. Having a hub for education, you start to kind of surround yourself with those same people who look for those same things. And it helps you really see who really gives a shit in the industry. And that's what I like to be around. I love being around Pat and Don. Like, these guys are so hungry and passionate, and they're a little bit older than I am. So it keeps me kind of believing in myself. Like, there's a lot of times, I'm sure you've been asked the same thing. Like, it's like, oh, you're going to do fitness for the rest of your life. I remember the first time I told my parents, 15 years ago, I was like, I want to be a trainer. They're like, how are you going to make money? Like, what are you going to do? And then still to this day, I'm pushing 40, and people are like, well, what are you going to do when you're 50 or 60? And I look at guys like Don, and I look at the, Pat, and a lot of these older guys who are still crushing it, and they're better than everybody else. So when I see guys, and Jay, these guys are still crushing the fitness industry. And I always said, I was like, when I drop dead or on my dying days, I'm hoping it's in a gym, because that means I was pushing it to the day I died.
You know what? I don't think I've ever had a conversation about this in over 210 episodes, about thinking about this as an absolute long-term, lifelong thing. Because I remember when I first started in a commercial gym, it was a little over 11 years ago. And at that gym, if I can think about it now, only maybe one person that I started with out of a crew of maybe like almost 20 trainers is still in the business. And she's got some really cool stuff going on. It's my friend Jen Kish, who's a former Olympian. But most of the rest, I mean, one of my pals, he went on to become a firefighter, and, other people went on to police services or paramedics, or you name it. And not necessarily a lot of people saw it as the long-term career solution. It was sort of a thing to do while you're in your 20s before you actually do your real career. So I suppose I would think anyone listening to this podcast is probably someone who would love to make a true life out of fitness. What do you think is essential for a fitness professional to excel in this for an entire life, and be able to, quote, retire? But I got a feeling that if we do this for our entire lives, we never fully retire, because that's
you don't retire from the gym, right? You don't retire from this lifestyle. If you truly love the lifestyle and enjoy the lifestyle, it's never something you stop doing. I obviously, like, money comes when you start to do something really well. And I still feel like I'm trying to master my craft even more, learning from people and understanding the human body more, and nutrition and everything else. I mean, there's so many pieces that go into it. So I still feel like I'm trying to get really good at that and master that craft. But for me, yeah, I want to make it my full-time thing. But the other day, I had just finished that piece of artwork in my gym. I had that gorilla painted on the wall. A friend of mine did, and we were chatting afterwards. And we were talking about passion. Like, I grew up drawing. No one ever had to tell me to draw. Like, it was in me. I wasn't born with the talent. I was born with the passion and the drive to want to be really good at it. Same thing with this, right? I think it's a God-given passion, right? To want to be great at it, to want to continue to spend your weekends when you could go away with your friends or your significant other to an island or something, or do it continued education. I missed out on so many things, so many opportunities in life. I remember 2-3 years ago, I went to Wadapalooza for this big fitness event. I just came back from actually this weekend as well. I bought my whole family tickets to go see Sebastian Maniscalco at the Garden, and I gave up my seat to go and further my career a little bit more. So I've missed out on so many opportunities and so many different things socially, so that I could get better at what I'm doing. Most of the time, if I take a vacation or I take off, it's to do more stuff within the fitness industry, or to grow my opportunities there. So I think you're born with the passion to want to go and do those things and see those as a priority. And then the talent comes with it. I've never been good at anything. I was never the strongest. I was never the fastest. I was never the smartest. But I like chasing it. I like getting after it. I want to learn more. I want to be better at things. And I think that I've seen so many talented trainers, so many talented, guys when I used to wrestle or play sports, CrossFit even, give up and they're like, I don't like it anymore. And they just lose the passion. They lose the drive. They had the talent. The talent's there. They kind of gave up on the passions end of it. And my buddy who had done the art piece for me, I met him through art. And I kind of just lost the passion. I kind of lost the drive to want to continue on. So, things happen in life. You get off the road and you take a different direction. That's fine. If it's something you really want to do in life, you're going to stick with it. And for me, it's like I kind of doubled down on myself here in New York. I signed a lease for the next couple of years to build out the space and make this my thing. So, I mean, are there days I question what I'm doing sometimes? Sure. I think everybody does. I think it's so normal and natural, but at the same time, 98% of the time, I'm like, yeah, this is what I love doing. What the fuck else would I be doing? Even if I had all the time in the world, like when I see these people who are just like floating through life, even if you have a ton of cash, I'm like, you don't have a direction. You don't have, what do you look forward to? Like, how many times are you going to take pictures sitting on the fucking back of a boat? Like, I would just get anxious having nothing going on.
I'm exactly like you. I struggle if I really have to sit down and do nothing. I don't slow down physically or mentally very well. I have a few things.
Yeah, me neither.
I'll sit down and like play a little bit of Witcher sometimes, but yeah, like I feel like there's always all this stuff to do, and it's been fulfilling. Right? I really love it. I can't imagine doing anything else. I've had the same sort of thought. I'm like, God, if I wasn't doing this, there's a lot of fortuitous events across my life that led me to be where I am, that created the opportunities that I've had. But I just like, what would have happened if some of these things hadn't fallen into place? Where would I be? And I just can't imagine the traditional job, right? Like I just couldn't do it. And I love what I do. And I really do imagine doing this forever. And I'm not in this rush to get away from the gym floor either. I really do hope I get to coach people like in person, hands-on forever. There will come a time where I'll do less hours of it. And that's the foundation of that is starting to be built now. And I'm a big believer in, I did a presentation just this past weekend for Kabuki Education Week. And a lot of it's on brand building in the fitness industry and a lot of the important aspects of it. And I like to think in terms of authority and credibility, and fitness professionals establishing, there's a whole array of things that fitness professionals can do that will set them apart as having credibility and authority in this industry. And I never kind of reveal the criteria for how I choose podcast guests. And there's a whole bunch of moving parts to it. But one of those things is whoever I have on here has to have some fairly substantial credibility and authority in a few key dimensions. And one is as an educator, and certainly a really good example is owning a physical facility. We have a lot of people in our industry who've been successful because they're very well known, at least either almost entirely or one dimension is the fact that they're a gym owner. Luca Hocevar is a good example of that with Vigor. He's done everything. Don, again, same thing. He's owned a gym. There's a whole bunch of Mark Fisher. Again, one of the reasons why everybody knows who Mark is. Well, Mark's an amazing educator and done an incredible amount of speaking, presenting, and built a really great reputation for himself. But it primarily started because of that physical facility that allowed him to grow into all these other dimensions and create those relationships. So owning a physical facility is a phenomenal piece of what I like to call career capital, that for any coach who's listening to this, if the fact that even if it's like you own a small studio, that should be first and foremost in your bio. It gives you credibility with everybody else around that you are a gym owner, right? And it doesn't matter if it's a 25,000 square foot facility, like, the new Evolves that are going in, or if it's a small place, like the rent on a 25,000 square foot facility in downtown Manhattan, that would be absolutely ridiculous. What's the square footage on your place?
2,400 square feet.
2,400, right? So you can do a really killer job with teaching people. Actually, here's a good line of questioning that I was going to pivot into. What does creating a great fitness experience look like when you have that constraint that you don't have a massive amount of space to work with and you have a group of people? So how do you do that?
So in New York City, it's a different environment for everything, right? And outside of Manhattan, everything is bigger, better, right? The more grandiose the space, the higher the ceilings, the more square footage you have, you're looked at as better. in New York City, it's like the more intimate, the better, right? If you have a small space where it's more exclusive, where you feel like you're at home a little bit more. Some of the best restaurants in New York, for Charles Prime, very intimate, small. They only have like 12 tables. It's very sought after. Rayos up in Harlem, another very small, intimate space. Emilio's Bellato, Carbone, all these places in Manhattan are very small. They're very tight. Minetta Tavern, right? That's the vibe of New York City. And what I wanted to do with the gym was to create that same vibe, that intimate little space, right? You work with what you have. You don't try to create more. Like when I was at my old gym, we had 11,000 square feet. So the whole time, the most important thing we had to worry about all the time is trying to fill the space. You have 11,000 square feet. Now you need to get enough people in there. Now I have a small amount of space where it's built for the community. And I've said this years ago when I built my first gym and things were starting to fall apart. It's like, build a community first, build that becomes the gym. The people become the gym. The employees become the gym. And then the four walls around it don't really fucking matter. I used to argue with the ownership over at my old gym. And I said, if I give you the keys to Madison Square Garden, great, you have the greatest arena in the world. But if you don't have the talent to put in there, then nobody's fucking showing up, right? If I gave you, faster Pussycat, you're going to get 50 people to fucking show up, but you're never going to pay the rent off. But if I get you fucking Billy Joel there, you're going to fill this place up. And that's what made it special. Madison Square Garden didn't become the greatest arena in the world because the way it was built. It's because who they had there was the talent that came through, right? It was the special moments that happened there. And I think that holds true. It's the same thing with these restaurants that I just named. It's not the four walls. It's the talent of the chef. It's the staff that work there. It's the way people felt when they walked in there. Like, that's what I wanted to recreate, that special feeling of being at home. Everybody wants to be accepted and feel like they're at home. Everybody knows your name. Like I said before, the whole idea behind Cheers, like, that's what's so warm about watching that show, right? Like, you felt like you belonged in that bar because everybody else did. People come from all walks of life. Like, my gym isn't all these stud athletes and fucking Instagram models. It's everyday people who feel like they have a place where they belong.
Andrew makes a pretty good Instagram model.
Yeah, he's a handsome little guy for sure.
Yeah, Andrew's great too. Met Andrew along with you in Seattle, for everybody listening on. So you got good people around you from what I've seen so far, and I like the energy of the space. Like, if anybody, well, what I always hope is anyone listening will turn around and follow your social media, and they'll get to see what it's like. You'll get to see a couple things, I guess, a bit of New York lifestyle, and a lot of the apparel brand stuff that you guys have been doing, and also like what the training facility looks like, and what's going on there. So let's actually talk the apparel brand. I mean, a lot of people love the idea of getting into apparel brands, and yeah. I mean, it almost, I don't even know how to say it, but it almost seems like a thing to do for some people in the fitness industry. But I like what you guys have done with yours. So what was the idea of stepping into another space? Because you're already focused on your core competency of this gym and this community. How does the brand make your core competency better and not take physical time and mental energy away from something that you need to make sure you do really well?
So the gym, like how you'll hear a lot of, different motivators and educators talk about having like a side hustle. For me, like, t-shirts have always been my thing. Like I said, I grew up doing art, and I love art, and I've always been a t-shirt collector. If I go to a concert or an event, I'm always getting the shirt. I'm one of those people. If I go to a gym, I'm getting one of the shirts. It's like, it's just my thing. I'm born with a passion to enjoy those things. Like, those are like, I still have a Harley Davidson, but if I went to like a different Harley dealership, if I rented something or I bought a part from there, I'd always get one of the shirts from there. So I have Harley shirts from South Africa, from China, from all over the world. I don't wear some of them. Most of them are probably printed. I read years ago that Harley makes like 60% of its profit off the apparel and stuff. But like, none of the shirts are made really that well. They're always like these boxy, really heavy shirts. So you got to chop them up, or you just got to be a fat bastard and fill them out a little bit more. I don't have the frame for it, but anyway, no. So it was kind of my thing. This is the third t-shirt brand I've had. I've started multiple t-shirt brands in the past. When I was in college, I was super into it. I wanted to do it. I remember reading a story in a magazine about Mark Echo and how he started with like 3 shirts and he was selling them out of the trunk of his car. And then when I was on television, I wanted to kind of just push something that I liked, that I believed in, that were cool shirts that I could wear everywhere. So I started another t-shirt brand. People don't realize that, like, when you start to get success, you probably failed 3 or 4 times before that, at least, right? So like my first gym, I guess you could have said I was successful, but like I didn't pay to go to school for exercise science or business school, but I learned a lot, right? And the same thing with the second gym I had. I didn't, again, pay for business school or exercise science, but again, I learned a lot. So this is my third rendition of the shirts, of the gym, and I'm hoping this is the one. If it's not the one, I have the passion to continue on to do it again. So for me, the shirts was just like shit I like doing. I'm like, oh, I love that idea. I can make that a shirt. Or I love the layout of that. I want to make that a version of my shirt. The whole idea behind Strong New York was the philosophy and the event that I had created. So I wanted something that meant, what strength was to me, right? It's the mental and the emotional and the physical all rolled up into one, right? I think the physical things that I've done in my life, running Ironmans, doing CrossFit, wrestling, has led me to believe that I could do certain things emotionally and mentally as well. So with that being said, it was kind of where I started the whole event from, and I started going to all these events. I went to the Arnold and Olympia and LA Fit Expo and FitCon and all these events. And to me, it was just like, it was more supplements and bodybuilding and things like that, where I wanted to make more of a community experience, just like the gym, and bring in educators and bring in people. And I just wanted a brand to go along with it. So I called the whole thing Strong New York. It's simple, it's clean, it's Strength New York. That's where we're at. I wanted to build something here in the city because there's no big fitness event here in the city. And Strong is something that everybody could get behind, right? I always say there's nothing wrong with being strong. There's never a downside. No one's ever like, you're too strong or you look too good. So I wanted those just simple ideas rolled up into one. And that's where I kind of came up with the idea. So everything's like kind of just a play on things that I love mixed with my brand.
Anybody can hear any beeping in the background. We're finally getting some snow clearing in my neighborhood. So again, in Edmonton, Alberta, we've been like getting cold weather with we've had some bad icy roads. So there's some equipment out there doing it finally. I love what you just said. And I tend to think of New York as this iconic example of perseverance. I mean, you're just talking about a lot of perseverance in your career. And I noticed the theme of like your third time and the fact that you stuck with it because you're passionate about it. I don't even need to say anything more about that because the lesson's embedded. But there's definitely something about the spirit of New York that, like, I think the brand Stronger New York is great because, we're both old enough to remember what it felt like with 9/11, right? That's what, 20 years ago now. And that was the epicenter of the world and what was going on and the focus because of that event. And New York, it was really strong in the face of it. I think it unified people. And I don't think there's anywhere in certainly North America that probably got hit harder because of the nature of New York with the pandemic, right? Because a lot of stuff was shut down. How many months was Mark forced to shut down MFF? I mean, they had to close one of their locations just due to how long you guys were in this restriction. So it's nice to see again, kind of coming out of the ashes of this stuff really strong. So I think there's some stronger theme going on in that.
Yeah, for sure. When you think about cities like Detroit or Newark, New Jersey, who they fall and it's hard for a city to come back. And New York does have a resiliency to it. And it is this, it's this larger than life city. Think about it, like during the 70s and 80s, it was shitty. During the early 90s, it was shitty. Then 9/11 happened. Then, we lived through 2 years of the pandemic. So it's like New York is every 10 to 15 years, it goes through these lulls. But it always comes back. And it's like, I think strength comes from, not the guy who's the strongest, but the guy who won't stay down. That's why we all love the Rocky story, right? Like he was beat just as many times as he won. And we love that. We love that human aspect of it. And it gives us all hope. Like, we love an underdog story, and it happens a lot of times here. And I, as much as people fucking hate him, one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Donald Trump. Don't hate me just because I said Donald Trump. But he used to say, he's like, I'd rather the guy who has lost a couple times than a guy who always wins, because the guy who's lost a couple times knows the pitfalls, right? Doesn't mean he's a loser. Like, anybody who believes that, like, oh, if you fail, you're a loser. It's like, no, you've learned. If you stay down and if you never try again, then you're a loser. But it's like, if you continue to try, right, and you continue to push forward, then, what could people say about you? You can't hate the guy for trying. You can't hate the guy for standing back up. So people who continuously persist and continue to go forward. Think about how many people, Abraham Lincoln, right? Everybody loves telling the story of like how many times he lost, and then he becomes one of the greatest presidents of all time. So I think we love that resiliency. And I think that's one of the things, the characteristics of New York that people love.
It's a characteristic that will be important for anybody in a fitness career. We've dealt with 2 years of extreme uncertainty, and I'm aware that I was really fortunate in a lot of ways. My ability to set up a home fitness studio, to ride things out. I doubled down on a lot of my media brand growth, social media growth, which flourished. And now coming out the other side of those 2 years, you can't go backwards and do it all over again for anybody who missed that opportunity. And maybe it wasn't something that people had the mental energy to do when it started. It just happened to be a lot of good luck. And that's turned into speaking engagements and more writing opportunities. But it all started for me with traveling to these fitness events. And again, I met you because I decided, even despite the headaches of, flying into it out of Canada, I still want to go down to Vigor. And actually, they wouldn't let me on my flight to come back because the place to get the testing had labeled my PCR test wrong. So I had to get them on the phone, get in line to get a test at the airport as a backup plan. Eventually, this place sent the right results. I go back upstairs, get booked on the next plane, lucky enough to make that, stressed out over a potential issue with a connection once I get back to Vancouver, because I had to take 2 flights instead of going straight to Edmonton. And I was burnt out. I was actually really sick for a day afterwards, just because of a full day of just pure stress. If anybody's ever had a day where it was just nonstop razor's edge of like sympathetic nervous system, like crush, and I crashed afterwards. But I'm so glad I went down. I got to hang out with you. I got to hang out with my buddy Luther Blover and hang out with Don and all these great people. My buddy Sam Forget. There was so many good people at that event. And so I said, no more fucking traveling until this shit's over. But then a couple of guys I know, Derek Mendoza and Nick Lamb, they're hosting an event called Raise the Bar in Florida. It's February 4th, 5th, 6th. And the lineup's nuts. Luca's speaking at it. It's like Chris Duffin and Dan John and
oh wow, really?
Molly Galbraith's in it. Dean Somerset was supposed to go. He couldn't. He's concerned about the travel restrictions, but he's going to do something virtually. Who else is in the event? Like, this thing is the who's who. It's got Clifton Harsky, John Russon's in it, Shanti Cofield, who's really super cool, Charlie and Ali Weingroff, Joel Jameson's going to be there. Like, this is nuts. Anyway, yeah. So it's a 3-day thing. I said, hell, I'm going down. Stuff could still go haywire between now and then. I got to be able to pass a test and get on the plane. But I decided to make a week of it, because then my favorite band, Tool, I see that they announced concert dates a while back. So I'm like, hold on a second. They're playing in Florida in February. Hold on, this event's in Florida in February. Let me look. So the events are 4th, 5th, 6th in Orlando. Tool's playing on the 8th in Orlando, and the 9th in Tampa, and the 10th in Miami. I'm like, oh shit, this is a side. So I get the tickets for Orlando in the 8th and Tampa the 9th. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do 3 days in a row, but I'm gonna go see these concerts. And so my girlfriend wanted to go down to somewhere like Mexico anyway. So I was like, all right, cool. Why don't you come with me? I'll pay for everything. And we'll go hang out for the week, and I'll do this event, and we'll go to the concert, and maybe we'll catch Universal Studios on the day off. So yeah. I'm going down. I don't know if you got that weekend free, 4th, 5th, 6th, but if you want to come down, man, There's
Yeah,
still
I think I might have to do that.
bring Andrew
So
down.
wait, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it, whatever the 4th, 5th, 6th are. So 3-day event. I think it is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the organizers are
Yeah.
great guys. I just had them on. So anybody who's listening to this would have heard me talking to Nick and Derek. Derek just finished up. He worked for the Seattle Mariners for years in their strength and conditioning crew. And Nick does a lot of like courses and stuff with online. His whole brand is Online Sleep Coach. But they're good dudes, and they're guys that I think more people should know about. And they're really doubling down on the educational space. Derek's down in, he's in Texas, and I know Nick is in Florida. And I don't know, man, I'm excited about this event. And yeah, the travel might be a bit of a headache, but we seem to have gotten good flights. I mean, there's tons that could go wrong. I know that a lot of flights have been getting canceled, and all it takes is just positive test, just because everything's out in the community just before it, and I can't get on that flight, and then it screws everything up. And then there's always a possibility of getting exposed down there and then getting stuck down there longer. But I said, you know what? I'm going to gamble on this. I'm going to be careful, take the best precautions possible. It'll be a fun experience to go see everybody. I mean, my buddy Lee Boyce is coming down from Toronto. So, I'm looking forward to getting to see him. I'm just trying to remember all the names on this lineup because it's crazy. Hell, I'm going to look it up right now.
Well, see, that's the thing. And that's why I created the event I did, was because I found myself traveling to all these events. It was Ohio and Arizona and Florida. And I was like, why just do something here in New York? So,
Brett Bartholomew, John Berardi, Nick Winkleman, who I'm excited to see, Tony Gentlecore and Lisa Lewis. Let me bring this thing up. This thing's nuts. Perry Nicholson.
Where's this going to be? At a convention center?
Yeah, Perry Nicholson. And it's a small, intimate event too. It's not a big one. It's smaller. Pat Rigsby's going to be there. Rachel Cosgrove. Mike Robertson is scheduled. Kevin Carr, Andrea Hayes, Steve Krebs, Michael Mullen. Yeah.
Krebs.
Yeah. Assuming that nothing changes, because there was another speaker in the lineup that I know also pulled out, so there's no point in even mentioning the name. But stuff can change. But either way, it's a crazy lineup. So, and it's Florida, so they ain't gonna cancel that.
Well, I guess I'm gonna see you in like 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is the boys are gonna give me. Actually, anybody listening who's interested, the boys are actually sending me an affiliate link. So I'll send you my affiliate link. You sign up through that, and I get something out of it. And I'm transparent about it. More and more, because of my media, people are sending me affiliate links, and I'm only going to endorse stuff that I believe in. I'm literally going there if everything goes according to plan. So
who's putting this whole thing on?
My pals, Nick Lamb and Derek Mendoza.
Okay. And they have a gym down in Orlando?
No, they don't have a physical facility, but it's going to be held at a facility. So what I'll do is off air, I'll actually connect you up with the boys. Okay.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Great. Yeah. I'll come down. I'll probably bring like 2 or 3 people with me.
Hell yeah. So. Cool. We'll chat a little bit more off air, but thanks for everybody for hanging out with me and Kenny. And I'm just sitting here smiling because I'm like, I really enjoy Kenny's energy. It's one of the reasons why I had to have you on here. And I'm glad it finally worked. So let's tell people where they can find more of you and your media, more about your gym.
Yes, super simple. The Strength Club NYC is our Instagram for the gym. At Strong New York is kind of the overall arching brand that kind of do everything underneath my programming, kind of the shirts. The gym kind of falls under that category. And then at Kenny Santucci is my, kind of private account.
Private account with 100,000 followers and a blue check mark, right?
Well, somebody told me the other day, they're like, you put up a lot of motivational stuff, and it wasn't by design or by, by purpose. It was kind of just the way I feel. And I just put up the shit that I enjoy. You'll see a lot of stuff about my family up there, and, just the mood and the way I am on a daily basis. I try to keep myself motivated. And by doing that, I guess I'm inspiring other people, which helps out sometimes. So, yeah, that's what I'm all about. And if you're not into that shit, then don't follow me. But definitely follow.
Anybody listening, I think, is probably plugged into the same kind of ethos that we are, right? To subscribe to the same philosophies and the same long-term interests. So I'm particularly inspired by the thought about, how do we make sure that this works for all of us for the long run? So anybody who's listening, again, always love to hear from you guys. Shoot me a message if you have questions, or, you want to think more about how to make your career sustainable. I'm always open to questions about it. Kenny, great to have you on here. Hang on offline. And for everybody else, especially if anybody has found this podcast through Kenny's media, and it's the first time you've heard me. So we've thrown a few names around. I've had Luca Hocevar on not too long ago. Luca always makes a really great guest. You know what? Scroll back through, listen to the Luca episode. And if you like it, scroll through my guest list. It's the who's who of the industry. You'll find people that you know and love. Listen to that stuff, and maybe I'll keep you around. Maybe you'll subscribe. I'll earn the continued listenership. And for everybody else who's already been here, thank you so much. I want to hear from you guys on Instagram. If you're not following me, Andrew Coates Fitness, make sure you connect there. Kenny, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, brother.